Sure. One of the things that that I have seen, even in the time that I've lived in Guthrie Center, and I've lived in Guthrie Center all my life, excuse me, but is the change in businesses and the way the downtown area looks compared to years in the past, because kids, it really has changed a lot. So the one area of business that I thought of that has changed a lot was gas stations. You know what I mean by a gas station? Delia, could you share anything you recall about the gas stations?
Yes, there was one on almost every corner.
Yeah.
And you pumped the gas, you had to pump the gas when you filled your car, but you didn't have to do it. The man that had the station filled your car for you. There were, I think, 9 gas stations in Guthrie Center in the early years, the one on every corner. They just had one pump of regular gas and one pump of cheap gas and one pump of the high,
The premium or the
premium. Yeah, they didn't call it premium then.
No,
I've
no.
forgotten the name for it now. But there were 3 different qualities of gas, and most people put the middle price one and had that one put in their car. We bought 6 gallons of gasoline for $1, and they would check your tires to make sure there was air in your tires, because tires weren't as good then as they are now. And so the gas, they washed your windshield, and now you do, if you the things are there so you can do that, but you do it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Big
So
change
there's a
there.
lot of difference, but there were at least 9. Every brand there ever was. It was Amoco and Phillips and Standard and
Deep Rock.
Deep Rock.
Yeah, there were lots of them. And how many places can you get gas today? 3, yeah, 3 places, so at least 9, and like she said, on every corner. Another thing that I thought of too that has changed is the grocery stores.
Yes. We had 9 or 10 grocery stores in Guthrie Center at that time also. They were locally owned and pretty much operated by the owner, and you might have 1 or 2 helpers. And one of them was a meat market that carried a few groceries. The Square Deal store had groceries in the back part of the building, and in the front part they had yard goods and blouses and cotton dresses, not real nice dresses, but and hosiery and undies, and they called it a mercantile store. The Alexander store was the same type of store. It was owned by the Alexander sisters. It'd been owned by the parents, but the Alexander sisters ran it for a lot of years, and there was groceries in the back of that one. There was a United Food store. There were 2 Masters groceries. There was Billy Masters grocery store, Fred Masters grocery store, and then there was up where the vacant lot is beside the dollar store now, there was the Leach grocery. And I remember when they first had the United was the first sort of a chain store, but we also had I don't see them around here anymore. I thought of that, I should have written that down, but maybe it'll come up after a bit. But they were beginning to be chain stores in the larger cities, but not many here. They were mostly locally owned and operated. But there were 11 grocery stores. One, Hugh Price's grocery store. That was our high school kids' favorite place to stop on the noon hour, because in those days we did not go to hot lunches at this high school. There was no lunchroom. We carried wanted our lunch wrapped up in the Des Moines Register. And we had 2 classrooms at the, none of you remember the old high school, but at the west end of that building, there was one was the algebra room and the other one was the geometry room. And the boys ate in the geometry room and the girls in the algebra room. And we had gotten our lunch out of our locker and ate our lunch, and then we could come downtown for the rest of the noon hour. And we stopped at Price's grocery store to buy a candy bar for a penny. And that was our big outing. And my parents were they were the type of parents that wanted us to do well in school. And if we had a good report card, they gave us a quarter and we could go downtown for lunch that day. And we'd have a 5-cent hamburger and a glass of milk. Maybe a little dish of ice cream. But times were so different then. Up through 8th grade, I went to a 1-room country school. That was where the students went until they're ready for high school. And also, after I graduated from high school, I was a 1-room country school teacher. I took my school teaching training under Miss Safely, who was our principal at that time. And she taught us psychology, school management, and teaching methods. And then we had to write state tests in all of those subjects. Plus we also took history, geography, and all kinds of math. And we had to write state board tests and all of those to be qualified to teach. And then we taught in the 1-room school. And I taught in 1-room schools for about 8 years when I was young.
Delia, what did they call that training?
Normal training.
Normal training. So kids, think about today, it's the college education that you have to become a teacher. That was called normal training. I wonder where the word normal came from or something like that.
I don't know for sure about why it was called normal training. But also I do know that we had to renew that certificate, and they sent us papers and lessons out from Iowa State Teachers College,
which is now
Cedar
the
Falls.
University of Northern Iowa.
Yes, and that was called the Iowa State Teachers College, and they would send us tests that we had to write and send back in, and we had to do that every other year to keep up our certificate. And you did get regular college credits for that. And I taught about 8 years, so I had about a year of college credit when I quit teaching.
And going back to the grocery stores, as Delia mentioned, most of them were not chain grocery stores, but more privately owned, and they all did very well. They had enough business to keep their doors open and do well. I just want to share one story. It was a little tiny grocery store on 2nd Street in Guthrie Center. And I think there's a bus stop close to it now or the bus drivers drop kids off. It was probably about 1/4 of this room. So if we divided this into 4 equal squares, that's all the bigger it was. And it was open on Sunday nights. And I loved to go to that grocery store. It's called Bloom's Grocery Store. Loved to go to it on Sunday night. All they had were just the basics, milk, bread, eggs, butter, toilet paper, soup, things like that. But it was a little dark grocery store, and it was the neatest little place to go to. And of course, it's been torn down and a house has been built in its place. But there were several grocery stores kind of like that too. One other thing we kind of wondered about was car dealerships. Yeah, kids, do you know what I mean by car dealerships?
Yeah.
What do I mean?
Like
Justin?
somewhere where you could go and buy a car.
Where you could go and buy a car. Could you talk about the car dealerships in Guthrie Center?
We had several car dealers. We had the Fog Garage sold Pontiacs and Oldsmobile, and Chevrolets and Buicks. And the Cowdens had Dodge and Plymouth. And, what was another one, let's see.
Ford?
Yeah, Ford.
Uh-huh.
And then there was a Fordson tractor shop right beside the Ford garage. And they were two brothers, the Hinton brothers. One had the garage and one had the tractor shop. And then there was several electric shops. There was one store that sold paint and wallpaper and house furnishings. And I think sometimes carpets. Most carpets in those days was not wall to wall. They were about 9 by 12 and they fit the middle of the room. And they sold house furnishings. There were a couple furniture stores here in town. And a dry goods store, 2 dime stores, 2 drug stores, three hardware stores, 3 lumber yards, 3 tractor and machinery people. McCormick Deering, John Deere, and Case. And each store carried what they carried, you know, and both drugstores had a soda fountain and a place to sit, and you could get malts and
Ice cream
Cokes.
cones, yeah.
and ice cream cones and fountain cokes. And they were flavored. You could get cherry coke or orange coke or some other kind. And
Now, kids, what kind of a change from what she has just shared about those different businesses, what change can you detect here? Trevor?
It's there's a bunch of them, and a lot of variety
Mm-hmm.
and everything.
Today, we're much more limited, aren't we? When she said 3 lumber yards, we have 1 now. No car dealerships.
No furniture stores.
No furniture stores, right? No,
car dealers.
yeah, right.
we also
Yeah.
had a creamery
And a creamery, yes.
that made butter.
Jackie, go ahead.
I hear this and it's like, wow, Guthrie has strong.
Yes, it
Yeah,
has,
yes.
business-wise it has, that's right, yes. Think, Delia, just talk a little bit about, the clothing business, because that was your business.
Yes, we bought, when my husband, he also had grown up in the area and graduated from high school here, and the first year he was out of high school, he worked at a clothing store, which years later we owned. It was just it is the building where, Benton's insurance is now. Mark Benton's wife's insurance.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was where this store was. And, Don worked in that the first winter or 2 that he was out of high school. And, then later he drove truck for Gerald Loncray, stock truck for Gerald Loncray, until we were married 4 weeks before Pearl Harbor. And he joined the Navy, and we were out of Guthrie Center for quite a bit, for 3 years. He was gone all the time, and I was gone part of the time. And, he had always thought, right after he got home from the Navy, Howard Gillespie had bought this clothing store, and he was so disappointed. He said, oh, I always thought maybe I could buy that store someday. And, but he drove, meat delivery truck for Wilson out of Omaha, and he worked for Mr. Gillespie on Saturdays. And he just had the store about 3 years, and he decided his apple orchard up by this school, you know where the apple orchard is, and he said, my apple orchard is taking so much time, I think I need to sell the store. Don said, oh, really? I always thought I'd like to buy it. I don't know whether I could swing it or not. And he said, well, if you would like to have it, we'll figure out a way that you can do it. And so we bought that store. We didn't own the building. We rented the building. It was owned by a man that lived in Atlantic. So we didn't have to buy the building. And can you believe that the stock of merchandise was like, in that whole store, men's clothing. And it was the top clothing lines. It was $9,000.
Which is that,
And now that wouldn't be a drop in the bucket today. You know, it wouldn't be a drop in the bucket. Well, I had taught school a lot of these years, and I'd helped my parents on the farm during the war because my brothers were in the service too. And I had been able to save quite a little bit of money, but not 9,000. But anyway, we took the money that I had in savings, and Don didn't have a chance to save any money because he worked 70 hours a week for $14. That was the way wages were back then. And but we borrowed as much from the bank as they would let us borrow, and we borrowed some money from Don's father. And my dad said, well, he said, you need a little bit of spare money. He said, I've got $500 that you can just use as long as you need it. When you don't need it anymore, you can give it back to me. We didn't have to pay my dad interest. We did pay Don's father interest because we borrowed about $3,000 from him. But it was amazing. We paid for that store in 1 year.
oh, really?
And because there was another clothing store in town that also carried shoes. They only had men's clothing, but they had men's and ladies' shoes. And then there was another shoe store in town that John Miller worked in. It was Burton's Shoes, and he started working there when he was in high school. And after Mr. Burton was ready to retire, he bought it, and so he had the shoe store for many years. We had everything we needed right in this town, just everything that was needed. And I never will forget, we started in the store the first day of May, and when Father's Day came along in June, we were so busy that Saturday, and we sold every necktie in the store and every pair of dress socks that we had. We were totally out of neckties and dress socks. That's what they bought for their dad for Father's Day. And but there was a warehouse in Des Moines that we bought a lot of things for, and we usually went to Des Moines every Monday to replace stock of things that we could get there. Salesmen called on us, and we ordered some things that came in packages, but we went to a couple warehouses in Des Moines and bought a lot of our merchandise. We made a trip to Des Moines every Monday. And
that was a big deal.
Yeah.
Going to Des Moines then was a big deal. You know, today, some of your families may make 2 trips a week to Des Moines, but that was a big deal.
yes,
Go ahead.
What kind of vehicle did you drive?
what kind of a vehicle? We had a Pontiac. But when we were married, we had the 1935 Ford V8 that my husband had bought as a used car. It was his first automobile. And 1935 Fords did not have good brakes. You had to double clutch it to stop it. And after the war, we had to put our name on a list because you couldn't buy cars. But as soon as he worked at the Pontiac garage, and he had his name on the list, and as soon as we could get one, and that's why we bought a Pontiac, because he worked there. but we had Pontiacs for several years, but, they were good cars, but it seems so good to have a car that had good brakes.
Good breaks. One other thing that I, have heard stories about myself is the Saturday nights in Guthrie Center, downtown Guthrie Center. Now you think about your Saturday nights,
Sleeping.
you may be home, you may be watching a movie, maybe you've gone to a movie. But Delia, could you share what the activities on Saturday nights were
Saturday
in
night,
Guthrie
all
Center?
the farm people came to town on Saturday night, especially in the summer. And they did in the winter, except just the very heavy winter. They
Mhm.
did, and in the middle of the winter, they came Saturday in the daytime, but the rest of the year, they came Saturday night. And the farm people usually got to town 6:30-ish to 7. And they would try to get in early and get a nice parking place, because the farm wives, when they got their shopping done, they didn't wanna stand around. They would sit in the car and watch people and visit with people. But all of us kids got together and we just up and down the street and in and out, you know, that was our prime recreation. And occasionally, if there was something good at the movie theater, we would go to the movie. And we could our mothers could buy our groceries and leave them in the grocery store until we were ready to go home. And so then we'd pick them up and take them home, because you didn't wanna leave them in the car at lunch, you know, but.
So there was a theater, a movie theater in Guthrie. And as she said, everybody came to town on Saturday night. That was what families did in the nice weather. Now, think about all the stores being open on a Saturday night. What is open tonight, now? Grocery store and maybe Subway, that's about it.
Subway's not open.
All right, go ahead, Zach.
How much did the tickets for the movie theater generally cost?
Usually 25 cents, unless if you're under 14, I think it was only 15.
Hayden, go ahead.
What kind of gas mileage did cars get?
I don't know if we paid much attention to it, because gas wasn't very expensive. We bought six gallon of gasoline for $1. And we just bought gas when we needed it. We didn't get as good a gas mileage as cars do today. Probably 15, 20 miles per gallon. But we didn't drive as far either, you know. My family drove farther away from town than many people did, because we had relatives that lived in Atlantic and Council Bluffs and Minnesota. So we did more traveling than most farm people did. When my husband went to the Navy, he had only been out of the state of Iowa to Omaha, because he drove stock trucks into Omaha all the time. And he had driven a stock truck into Chicago once and into Missouri once. And otherwise, he'd never been out of the state of Iowa. And when he came home from the Navy, he'd been on every continent except Australia. So, you know, what a change this was. Because we had relatives that lived away, and my parents were family people. My grandmother lived in Council Bluffs. We went there 3 or 4 times a year, you know.
Sure.
And we went to Minnesota once a year, because the other grandparents lived there.
Jackie, did you have a question?
Yeah. Did you have any drive-in theaters?
There were drive-in theaters. That was much later. I think the drive-in theaters we probably didn't have those until probably not after World War II. It'd be the early 50s,
Yeah,
I think.
right.
It would be about as soon as we had drive-in theaters. There was one in Panora. They used to show movies in the courtyard on I think Saturday evening after we lost our theater.
Yes, yes. Trevor?
What was minimum wage?
They didn't have a minimum wage. Yeah, there was no set wage that had to be, that you had to have that much. There was, you got paid what the person that hired you thought he could afford to pay you, and if that was the best job you get, that's what you got.
Connor? Okay. Is that, or Ben?
What was the police like? How
The
about
what?
the police?
The police, we had a night watchman, that walked around and checked all the stores at night to make sure the stores were all locked. It was just one policeman. And there was, one that was kind of around in the daytime. Police were not a big need at that time, just, we had very, very little problems with things like that.
What about?
It was a simpler time.
Yes. Kaden?
What was your favorite thing to do as a kid?
Favorite thing to do, well, since I was an only girl between two brothers, I was pretty much a tomboy. So I played in the haymow and walked the beam in the barn and swam in the creek and rode horseback, bareback. Yes.
Do you like the changes that Guthrie has made?
I like the changes, except that I would really like to have, being able to return to having good stores and that they could be supported. If, now, at my age, I've driven into Des Moines for years and years, but now at my age, it's not easy. It would be nice just to be able to go downtown and buy what you want and not have to go to Des Moines.
Because you can't buy shoes in Guthrie Center.
No.
You know, none of us really can we? Yeah. So if we're going to need shoes, we have to go out of town, and as Delia said, that's hard for some people. Go ahead, Justin.
When you hear the word Guthrie Center, what first comes to mind?
What?
When you hear the word Guthrie Center, what first comes to your mind?
Just a happy, wonderful community. I have loved living here. I love the country area. I love living in the country. I loved my life as a country school teacher. And I have lived in Boston, Massachusetts, Norfolk, Virginia, Seattle, Washington, San Diego, California. But Guthrie Center is an awfully nice place to call.
What did you say again? Guthrie Center means a happy,
Yes.
happy community.
A very good community, a very good community. And we were very fond of Atlantic. My mother had grown up in Atlantic, and my father grew up in Council Bluffs. So I was, as far as larger places, I was very familiar with both Atlantic and Council Bluffs, much more than I was Des Moines. We did not go to Des Moines very much.
Changes over, oh, go ahead, Blaine.
When you had to drive into Des Moines back then, were the roads really difficult to drive on?
No, not really. There weren't near as many cars as there are now. Yes.
Dean, go ahead.
Were there like any restaurants in town?
Yes, we had good restaurants. We had a family by the name of Kronk that had a wonderful restaurant here for years and years. And another Kronk had another restaurant. There were two Kronk restaurants in town for a lot of years, and 2 or 3 other smaller restaurants. Yes.
Did you have any pets growing up?
Any what?
Pets?
Pets. We lived in the farm, on the farm, so we always had a dog, and usually kitties.
What were the cats' names?
Oh my goodness, we had lots of them.
Just changes over time, Delia. In what area do you think you have seen the most changes in Guthrie Center? If you could target one area, what area do you think you've seen the most? Or just maybe not just Guthrie Center, but just in general?
In general.
Mhm.
I don't think families have as much fun as they used to. Families used to be together and have lots of fun. I had a raft of cousins and we had great times getting together, and the neighbor kids all got together. Yes, you have a question?
So when, like, you went to Des Moines, like, was the interstate there, and was it that
No,
difficult
there
to
wasn't
find
an
a
interstate.
store?
This highway that went through Guthrie Center, when we first moved here, was a brick street. And the road coming into Guthrie Center was gravel. And going on east was gravel road. And, then we lived 10 miles west of Guthrie Center and 2 miles south. And when we turned south, that was a dirt road, and if it rained, it was muddy. And, so, we really tried to do things when the weather was nice, you know. But, and I remember the year that my older brother started to high school, they, paved this highway coming in, and it was Highway 7 at that time. It was a state highway, and it was Highway 7. They had a horrible time getting to school that year. You know.
Maya, go ahead.
What type of outfits did people wear?
What?
What type of outfits did people wear?
Oh, girls wore dresses. Yeah, they wore dresses everywhere. We were not allowed to wear slacks to school in high school. When I was in high school, girls were not allowed to wear slacks. Yes.
Kids, when I was in 6th grade, and you know that I went to this building, girls wore dresses every day. The only
Yes.
day we could wear pants or slacks, not jeans, slacks, was on PE day.
Yes.
And so on a day like today, we were in dresses.
Wait, how long was the dress? Is like little, like up to your
Knees,
knees?
yeah.
Were those like poofy
Okay.
dresses, like in the 50s?
No, kind of straight dresses, yeah. Okay, one more there, Seth.
How many churches were there?
Oh, we had a lot of, 9 churches in Guthrie Center, I think. There was the Methodist and the Wesley Methodist and, Baptist and Christian, and there were 2 Christian churches. And, Seventh-day Adventist.
Yeah, Catholic Church.
And Catholic Church.
Presbyterian.
And Presbyterian.
Yeah. Jacob?
Is there I don't know if I know this right, but was there an opera house somewhere in Guthrie?
There was a movie theater. Oh, there was an opera house. That was no longer operating by 1923 when we moved here. But there had been an opera house, and that is where the hardware store is now, that corner store on 3rd Street.
No,
No.
the hardware store.
The hardware store. And up, that was owned by the Finnegan family, and up above was a hall, and I danced a lot of dances up in that Finnegan Hall. That was our favorite place to party when, as a young adult. Yes.
Noah? Go ahead, Noah.
I think Mrs. Shear shared this with me once, that there was like this store named after Fiermeyer.
Yes,
Oh,
that's right, yeah.
Yeah,
They had
it
a
was
furniture
mile
store.
It was a hardware store, and, they had a
Yeah.
lot of nice things.
Yes.
They had some furniture.
Yes.
Yes.
Did you ever have to deal with any extreme weather?
Extreme weather, yes, I think our winters were harder than they are now. We had more snow in the winter.
Okay, now, kids, we have to stop, Delia. Kids have to get ready to go.
Uh-huh.
Thank you for coming in. This has probably been very enlightening to them. 6th graders, please sit tight. Please sit tight, sit down, please.
You've been a really interesting group, and I've been amazed at how attentive they've been.
They were
And
very good.
I hope you enjoyed listening as much as I have enjoyed sharing with you.
And I think you've got some great things to, great information to be able to go off and try those poems next week then also. Thank you so much.
Yes.